In my view, entrepreneurship is the culmination of emotional maturity of a person. Now, I want to clarify here that by even entrepreneurship, I don't necessarily mean being starting or being a business owner. To be an entrepreneur is to take charge of your own life and to say to yourself very clearly that nobody is responsible for me and I will do whatever it takes to ensure that my goals and my hopes and aspirations are reached in a way which is ethical and moral and which is in a principled fashion. Having said that, I'm going to talk about my entrepreneurial journey with specific focus on the challenges that entrepreneurs face. I started my entrepreneurial journey in 1983 and I'm recording this in 2025, so that's a lot of years. In 1983, I started my entrepreneurial journey in terms of preparing myself, and I set up my consulting company in 1994. So that period between 83 and 94 was a preparatory period in which I was a full-time manager running tea, coffee, cardamom, and rubber plantations at different times, as well as training myself to become firstly a leadership trainer and then to start my company as an entrepreneur. A friend asked me recently if and how the challenges that entrepreneurs in 2025 today face are different from those that I faced back then in the 80s and 90s. In my view, so therefore I thought the best way to answer that is to share what my challenges were, and I'll leave you to decide whether what you face is any different. In my view, all entrepreneurs, irrespective of time, face two critical challenges, and neither has to do with the nature of the business but with being an entrepreneur, irrespective of which business you decide to go into. But these challenges are critical to anticipate and prepare for and to resolve satisfactorily if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur. I face them, and as I said, I will let you decide if anything has changed in these subsequent 40 plus years. The first and most important challenge is to deal with ambiguity and uncertainty. To me, this is literally the biggest make or break challenge that every entrepreneur faces. Most of them come unprepared for it. To mentally switch from an assured income, a salary every month, no matter how small or large that might be, to I'm free to earn as much as I want, generates anxiety and fear, not contentment. And quite obviously, the larger the salary that you are drawing at the time that you decide to become an entrepreneur, the greater the anxiety, the greater the fear of failure. Removing the safety net does that to the most expert trapeze artist, let alone the first-time entrepreneur. Many, if not most, are unprepared and it comes as a shock. Many of them fail in their entrepreneurial initiative and go back into the employment pool. Ambiguity is certain. Yeah? That sounds like an oxymoron, but in the case of entrepreneurship, it's completely true. The only thing you can be sure about is butterflies in the stomach. The solution is to prepare and to prepare and to prepare. Mental preparation even more than material preparation. Entrepreneurship, as I mentioned right in the beginning, is about emotional maturity. It's about growing up in a real sense. It's about accepting responsibility for yourself and your destiny. Anxiety is the wrapping of that package. When you say to yourself, I'm free to earn as much as I want, what they don't tell you is two things. One, it's not as much as I want, but as much as I can do. It's all about work. It's all about work. Wanting is only the motivator, but it's work and only work that can yield results. The number of hours you spend on your startup is important, but even more important is what you do in those hours. Your systems are more important than your expectations. Expectations are free. You can have any expectations you like, but systems take discipline and determination and back-breaking effort. They require tears and blood. But you do it because you believe it is worth it. Because to make your dream come true is important enough for you. Not just to talk about that, but to actually make it happen. Two, that freedom is another name for owning responsibility. Freedom is not free from the consequences of action. It means that you recognize that you are responsible for your actions and are consciously accepting that responsibility. We are all responsible for our actions anyway, but when you are an employee, you live in a parent-child bubble. I'm using TA terminology for those of you who understand transaction analysis. You live in a parent-child bubble. You allow yourself to be conditioned to believe that the employer is responsible for your happiness, and your role, like that of a child, is simply to feel sad, glad, bad, mad. When you set out as an entrepreneur, you grow up. You break out of this fantasy and accept that whatever happens to you depends on what you do. Now, interestingly, that is still the case even if you're working for somebody else, but you fool yourself into believing that is not the case. Now, that's a hugely empowering realization, and I strongly recommend that for everybody, no matter whether you are an independent business person or you are a mother or a father or a teacher or anything, including an employee, to own up and accept and respect the fact that what happens to you is your responsibility. Your career is in your own hands without exception. Now, it's hugely empowering because it means that if you want good things to happen to you, you don't just have to wait for someone on high to grant them to you, but you can work to make them happen. If you can deal with that, you cannot fail. If not, you cannot succeed. So the truth about entrepreneurship is that you can only have whatever you work for. Now, they don't tell you that the only way you can get what you want is by working for it. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't tell yourself that. I told myself that. It is not want, but can. I can have whatever I can do, not whatever I want. So I needed to work my butt off if I wanted to succeed, and I did that. That was not difficult for me because I had always been used to working 18, 20-hour days, 7 days a week for over 3 decades before I started out on my entrepreneurial journey. But this is critical. If you feel sleepy, ask yourself which is more important, sleep or success. You can have both, but not at the same time. I want to say to you, not in the same lifetime. Just for perspective, 8 hours per day is 33%, 1/3 of your lifespan. Anyone who is willing to give up that much for sleep wants to sleep more than to succeed, so sleep. The antidote to sleep is physical exercise, especially aerobic exercise. Good for health, drives away sleep, drives away depression, drives away anxiety, helps you to think. Anytime you need to think deeply about something, go for a long walk. Right? Walking drives blood to the brain using the big muscles in the legs, and you can think better. Running doesn't do the same thing for thinking, but walking does. If you want to think, leave your earbuds at home. Just think. Otherwise, walking can also be used to multitask usefully by listening to something beneficial, some podcasts and so on and so forth as you walk. I like to listen to history and startup podcasts, and I find them very inspiring. So, all in all, walking is the best medicine. In a bottle, 10,000 steps. 10,000 steps a day, make this your minimum. And try and do the 10,000 at a stretch. And what's more, at the end of the day, you will sleep like a baby and get more goodness out of 4 hours of sleep than you would have out of 8 hours after sitting around all day. Make aerobic exercise a rigid part of your daily routine. In Bangalore, where I started my business, I would sometimes go to the gym at 10 p.m. because I'd been teaching all day, but I never went to bed without hitting the gym first. The second strategy is to create structure in your thinking and in your life. Make a timetable, no matter how nebulous and uncertain it might be, but have a timetable that you stick to. Now that's the key, to stick to the timetable. Today, many people fall into the app trap. I call this the app trap. Download an app and you think it will work for you. Guess what? It won't. It's still, you must still work. I find the best app is a simple notepad, because as you write in it, your brain activates at a different level than tapping an app. This helps to develop the power of structured thought. First comes the thought, then the plan, then the action. If you want to work effectively, you must learn to think clearly. That means to think in a structured way. Working with a timetable is the best way to do that. Now, here's a good way to start. Begin your day with a list of 3 things that you need to accomplish that day in order of priority, and define metrics for each of them. What is the minimum you need to accomplish? What does a star performance look like? Remember, this is to motivate you and to give meaning to your effort. So it's very important to start with metrics. Priority is based on the immediate goal of your roadmap. This means that you have a clearly defined, written down goal, which you have further broken down into short-term goals. If you haven't done that, first do that, because priority is a function of goal clarity. Then start with the first goal, complete it, then go to the second one and complete that, and so on. Now, don't start with multiple goals simultaneously. Multitasking is the biggest fantasy, and it is the biggest destroyer of productivity. Do tasks one at a time. Don't start with multiple goals simultaneously. If you are interrupted, return and complete the goal you were working on before you go to the second goal. At the end of the day, evaluate your day based on the metrics you created for each goal. Make this into a hardwired habit. Never start a day without a goal and metrics to measure accomplishment. Your life will become purposeful and satisfaction guaranteed. This systematic approach is the best antidote, also, as I mentioned before, for anxiety and depression. Daily goal measurement gives you direction, and metrics give you the satisfaction of achieving the goal. So set tough metrics. Remember that satisfaction is proportionate to the difficulty of the challenge. Set and accomplish difficult tasks if you want to feel highly satisfied. It won't happen with easily achieved goals. To give you an example, Mount Everest is 8 kilometers tall. That's 8 kilometers of earth. Somebody who's climbing Mount Everest, when they get to the top, they have walked 8 kilometers on planet Earth. So if I now decide that I'm going to do more than that, and I say I'm going to walk 10 kilometers today, and then I say give me a medal because I have done more than somebody who scaled Mount Everest, you would laugh, because it's not the earth, it is the angle of the earth. It is the degree of the difficulty that makes climbing Mount Everest a task which is hugely satisfying for the person who does that. And if you just walk, on level earth for 10 kilometers or what, obviously you have not made that kind of effort, and so your satisfaction also will be to that extent less. Metrics also prevent us from fooling ourselves into thinking about how hard we worked and how much we sweated and whatnot. If you can't measure it, it did not happen. Make this into a absolute maxim for yourself. If you can't measure it, it didn't happen. It doesn't matter how hard you worked. You need to do more, or you need to do different things the next day. The biggest failure trap is making excuses. Excuses do not change reality. Let me repeat that. Excuses don't change reality. Failure won't change to success because you had a good excuse for it. If I lose my wallet, if I have my wallet in my back pocket and I'm going through a crowd, maybe a fair or railway station or something, and my pocket gets picked, and I come to you with my lovely sob story, and I tell you how this was such a obvious, almost inevitable thing that I was in this tremendous crowd and this happened, and you commiserate with me and you say, no, absolutely, you're right. There's no fault of yours. All these, may God curse all these pickpockets. Anyone can say anything you like, but the fact of the matter is, my wallet has gone because I give an excuse which somebody finds reasonable, and they say, oh, but you see, this was quite understandable, or it had to happen. My wallet will not miraculously pop back into my pocket. Loss is loss, no matter what kind of excuse you have for it. The way to avoid loss is to stop giving excuses, to analyze why it happened, and then fix those loopholes. Make sure it never happens again. Excuses only prevent you from learning. Instead of making excuses, ask yourself, how did this happen? And what can I do to fix it and ensure that it will never happen again? You can achieve great goals, or you can make excuses, but you can't do both. So decide early which one you want to do. Metrics are indispensable for anyone who wants to achieve success. As Michael Harry, the author of Six Sigma Quality Standard, famously said, if you want to see what someone values, see what they measure. Ask yourself, what do I value? And then measure it. Structured working and metrics also deal with anxiety and ambiguity because they act like guardrails for runaway imagination. We seem to be pre-programmed to think of worst-case scenarios, which is pointless and debilitating. Structure keeps the mind focused on achieving immediate goals and gives meaning to effort and the satisfaction of achieving it. This is energizing and encouraging. So this is the first thing that all entrepreneurs, first challenge that all entrepreneurs face, and the first challenge that you need to prepare for if you want to succeed as an entrepreneur is how to deal with ambiguity and uncertainty. The second one is managing relationships. Every ship needs a safe harbor to return to. That is your home and family. Ships are built to fight storms at sea. But if there is a storm brewing in the harbor, the ship will sink. A supportive family is therefore the most powerful of all resources. That will happen if they understand what you're doing and how that will benefit them in the future. Entrepreneurs are always short of time, and many treat the family like furniture. I like it, I need it, I use it, but I don't maintain it until it breaks down. Many a potential great enterprise suffered or came apart because a divorce was added to the cost. Worse than a divorce is a dead marriage which tries to pretend to be alive. Likewise for children, they need time and attention, not only food and gadgets. Paying bills is the default, but not enough by far. My wife has always been my greatest supporter, and be it from the time when 1 month after we got married, she went off to stay with her parents for the next 6 months for me to complete my executive MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, IIMA, Ahmedabad, to living without any frills and taking no vacations for more than a decade because I used to spend all my spare cash on traveling all over India to apprentice with senior behavioral trainers. She always supported me and encouraged me to work to realize my dream of becoming a globally recognized leadership expert. Now, without that support, I would not have been able to do anything. That is why I want to emphasize the importance of building good relationships, starting with the family. You need to take off the work hat and put on the family person hat and play that role with equal sincerity and integrity, understanding that it is as important to entrepreneurial success as anything you do in the workplace, if not more. Take the family into confidence. Set aside a time each week. Call it the family council. Create a little ritual around it. It must be at a specific time every week. Everyone must dress up for it because it's work time. Some food and drink, some props to make a presentation, show a video, and so on. And most importantly, take notes. Some people complain that the spouse and children don't have technical knowledge to understand your business plan or what you're doing. I say that is the best reason to speak to them, because the best way to understand your plan is to explain it to a 5-year-old so that he understands it. And somebody much smarter than I said this in the first place. If you can't do that, it means you don't understand it yourself well enough. Also, in my experience, people who know nothing about the workings of a business bring a fresh, new, sometimes shocking perspective which the business founder may not have seen at all. Most business founders tend to get caught up in the what and how that they lose focus on customer perception. Remember, your customer looks more like your spouse and children than like you. It will be someone who not only does not know how the thing works, but is not even interested in learning. They are interested only in using that product or service, and so they are interested in how it will help them, how it will help them to solve whatever problem that they're trying to solve. Now, most importantly, managing cash flows is a critical need when you start out as an entrepreneur. Especially if you had a salaried job, you had a regular stable cash flow and you planned your expenses based on that. But as an entrepreneur, cash comes in spurts. Some lean months and some months with plenty. And sometimes a big gap between the two. That is why it's important to keep tight control over expenses. Make a budget and stick to that. Avoid all spontaneous buying. If you or any of the family members need anything, create a culture of budgeting for it and then spending the money only at the agreed time. They should present their spending proposal to the family council, which can then decide on that. That way, people get into the habit of looking at expenses as serious matters to be incurred only after due thought. It's a good way to keep everyone involved in the entrepreneurial journey and keep the focus on success. It helps people see how financial discipline is critical to success and prevents you from being seen as the stick in the mud for everyone. When people make decisions collectively, they take responsibility for them. Budgeting and planned spending also takes care of the anxiety that happens when you and your family realize that there is no paycheck at the end of the week or the month. Saving and spending thoughtfully never hurt anyone. Now, we used to call this VOC, Voice of Customer in GE, and had sessions where customers were invited to come and talk to us about how they experienced the GE product or service that they used. The listeners, GE people, had strict instructions to listen, to take notes, and to troubleshoot, not to make explanations, and definitely not to give excuses. Just listen and act. When you do this, the customer feels that he or she is important and that their view is valuable. VOC is a very powerful tool. Voice of Customer is a very powerful tool to retain customers as well as to make your customers your brand ambassadors. So test yourself. Talk to your family. Don't talk down. Speak clearly. You may need to back up and explain some basics first, or you may need to help them to focus on key financials and not get bogged down in complex spreadsheets. Anytime you feel irritated about this, remind yourself that this is your test and your practice session, because as I said before, your customers are going to be more like your family than like you. If one way doesn't work, try another and another until you find the one that clicks. Ask them how you can help them understand, and then listen to them and do it in that way. They are your teachers. Leverage this market testing, the test marketing that is available to you right in your home. Be endlessly patient. Smile, make it fun like a game. Announce prizes. Say, here's what I'm offering to the market. Tell me, how would you sell it? Children, especially, when they get an atmosphere that supports inventiveness and imagination, will come up with ideas you wouldn't have been able to think of in a million years. Leverage that. It's free. A huge benefit of this will be bridging the generation gap and improvement in your communication with your family. That alone is worth working for, right? Now, remind yourself that this is not time wasted at all. It's most valuably spent in improving your ability to sell your ideas in a way that helps customers to see WIIFM, what's in it for me. That's the most powerful sales technique for any product or service on the face of the earth. If you can show people what's in it for them, you don't need to sell them anything. They will beat a pathway to your door. Proof? Long lines of customers every time Apple announces a new phone. The best way to help customers to see WIIFM, what's in it for me, is to ask them what they see as the benefit of that product or service. Not its features, not mechanics, but user benefit. Because if the user can't see it or use it, it's not there. Let the user tell you what they want, and then you provide that. In conclusion, I want to say that entrepreneurship is the logical, psychological progression of the individual, which marks his or her maturity as an adult who is willing to take responsibility for themselves and the world around them. Entrepreneurship, with the right frame of reference, represents all that is good about the human condition, because it reflects not only the drive to do something good for oneself, but also for others. Small and medium enterprises are the backbone of local society, because their founders invest in the community and are dependent on it. Small and medium enterprises fund all kinds of local facilities and needs like schools, religious institutions, charities, healthcare, care for the elderly, and so on. They source their needs locally, they pay taxes locally, and they participate in local government. They provide employment to local people, and they build community. Now, this is very different from huge global businesses which may be physically present in a place, but they employ outsiders and source all their requirements from global suppliers because they get better prices for bulk purchases. They participate minimally in local society, if at all. When towns have thriving small businesses, the whole town thrives. And when local businesses die or are replaced by multinationals, we have ghost towns. Entrepreneurship, therefore, does a lot more than simply make money for the owner and his family. Entrepreneurships and entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of society. All power to those who have the courage to strike out on their own and to stand on their own feet and help others to do the same. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you will be one of them. Thank you very much. Get back to us, subscribe to the channel, post your comments, and we will always respond. Thank you.